So after you finance yourself and finance your game and you're looking for where your future is, you're going to talk to one of these guys about potentially finding a home for your company. So we've got a great group of folks, Chris Bergstresser from both Tobin and MTG, Alexis Bonte from Stillfront, John Peterson from Jam City, Jaakko Harlas from Supercell, and Sean Lee from Wargaming. So all active in the corp directors of those respective companies. So let's start it out. I'd like to hear from each of you kind of what role corp dev and acquisitions plays in the company. And so if you could start with what percentage of your revenues come from acquired assets? And should we start with Wargaming?
I looked at the question last night. I think roughly 30% plus possibly comes from acquisitions. And what I mean by that is we started off World Tanks, that was internal studio, but World of Warplanes, World of Warships, World Tank Blitz, and some other titles have been made by studios that we acquired. So fairly sizable.
How about Supercell? My guess is the answer is going to be a different...
Yeah, I think right now it's still very small. I think probably like 1 or 2%. Given that I think we're still sort of early days on the M&A and investment side, and also I think most of our investments are in very early, like seed or Series A type investments. So I think we're still sort of, we have a long-term view on it, and hopefully that percentage will become a lot bigger in the future.
John?
Yeah, we are close to 50% right now on what we've done with M&A.
And I think at Stillfront, we're the opposite of a spectrum. I'd say it's close to 100%, probably 95%.
Really? Okay.
What we're doing is we're doing a roll-up of semi-autonomous game studios, so that's our business.
And so on the MTG side, before MTG split, it was maybe 50-50. But since the split, it's 100% growth through acquisition, and I'm an advisor on for MTG still, but Group COO for Toadman Interactive. There, it's a similar model to Stillfront, where we're buying autonomous studios and tucking them under the umbrella. So although we still have some legacy business that's in the work for hire. 90%, maybe even 95% is still through individual companies that we've acquired.
I think that's relevant. I mean, if you even take the industry pioneers like Electronic Arts, other than the sports titles, everything was acquired. Every studio started out through an acquisition and then grew organically, but from an inorganic route. So I think it's important to realize that this is core to the strategy of the growth of many companies. As you're looking for potential targets to bring in, what is the strategy? Is it to get standalone businesses that grow on their own? Is it to integrate businesses into yourself? What are you looking for when you're looking for targets? And or are there multiple things that you have that kind of are in the target list?
I'll be happy to start.
Yeah.
We're looking for companies that, for us, it's really about the team. I mean, you can look at product, you can look at the KPIs of the product, and that's great, but what really drives that are the teams. And we want to find teams that have created a great culture internally, have a strong vision for the future, and can continue to grow on their own. We don't look to integrate the companies. We're investing in the culture that they've created and the way they do business as much as the product. So for us, we just look for those teams that have that quality to where they can grow, but also share that knowledge base across the other portfolio companies. I think the one nice thing about, say, even a company like Stillfront is you have all these different companies with different perspectives on the games market, and being able to share thoughts and ideas on that, I think, allows you to innovate.
Yeah, I'd love to hear the Stillfront strategy, because in a roll-up, that is a much different approach to life than if you have an existing studio and you want to tuck somebody into the organization. So
yeah, so I think that you need to understand Stillfront. You need to understand that we're all entrepreneurs and we're all co-owners of Stillfront. It's a very kind of Swedish egalitarian society type thing. I'm not sure it would be possible to do in the US, for example, with But the way it really works and what we look for is we look for studios that have been around for a long time, with teams that have been doing it for a long time, that have been through ups and downs, and but once we kind of move in and get a studio to join the family, what we're looking at is basically a studio that's profitable, that is in a position where it can scale, and very importantly, we don't believe in the kind of hit and miss side of games. What we look for is games that have long life cycles, so people games where players play for years and years and years, and that allows us to have this wide portfolio of 35 games right now, live games that allows you to basically be a games company and a public company, which is usually doesn't go well together.
That's not a natural combination.
In our case, it's working well because of that strategy.
So John, as a non-public games company, what's your perspective on this?
Yeah, so we look for seasoned teams that have the culture and the drive that we have, that we're looking for. I mean, teams that have failed but are excited about the new opportunity that they have, and if the KPIs meet what we're looking for, then we dig in deeper, and we have a number of different tool sets within the company that they can utilize, whether it's user acquisition, consumer insights, machine learning. We have a great set of tools if they choose to or not. So we're not mandating that they use everything that we have, use what they want, and it's been a good success for us.
So we've had three answers here that are more on the portfolio side, where you're building an aggregation of teams of existing products that are in the market and have KPIs, are profitable. Jaakko, that's not what you're looking for.
Yeah, again, I think what is common with all of us is I think we're looking for great teams and teams that can have like big potential in the future. But yeah, we're not tied to the teams having a product in the market already or games that are generating revenues or profits. So I think we can also take a very long-term view, that we see something in the team that we think can have a big impact at some point, and we can take like a very long-term horizon, 5-10 years, if not even longer. And yeah, the teams that we invest in, they continue as fully standalone businesses. We can do both minority or majority. The teams will have their own culture, but we are there sort of in the background supporting them and helping them in any way we can. And one important part of our model is also, as Chris and Alexis said, that sharing the learnings between all the investee companies, and also sharing learnings between us and the teams. And so I think we feel there's a lot we can also learn from different teams. It's not just us sort of spreading our information to them.
I think just a slightly different perspective. We have a different flavor, which is going back to the great teams. I think the definition of great teams also depends on what you're needing and looking for. So in our case, sometimes a great team for us is, like many of you guys, great teams, great ideas, standalone, they can grow on their own, maybe some help and whatnot. But also for us, sometimes a great team is a team that can fill our gaps. So maybe they're not creating original IP, but we have some vision around some products that they can help fulfill, take as their own, and run with it. So just want to add a little bit more color that definition of great team could be different depending on who you're interacting with.
So how many of you will take on in a purchase a company that needs another $30 million of development to reach the market? I mean, are you at all open to that kind of a deal where long life cycle, long development, have some promising early results, but they're a long way from launch? Is that even possible in your model?
Well, I would say on the MTG side, with that's where they have the investment fund, and they've invested into play ventures, so they can kind of look for those bets. It's not a big team at MTG, so to actually go out and acquire something like that, it'd just be impossible to manage. And even from a Toadman, we're leaving the legacy studio to organically grow on its own. So we're taking the portfolio approach like Stillfront. So no, we wouldn't make a big bet like that.
Would even Supercell take on that kind of a long life cycle of development?
At least we haven't done any of those so far, so I think we sort of prefer the more sort of mobile development cycles where the cycle is shorter and you start getting data from real users earlier on. So, but yeah, of course, we still look at investment on a case-by-case basis, so we definitely would look at them, but haven't done any yet.
I think from our perspective, we kind of can, and we did, and we do. I mean, just very nearby, some of you know, we acquired a studio called Edgecase Games out of Guildford, UK, a year ago. Of course, going back, they were a great team because they didn't necessarily have an original IP they wanted to run with, but they were a great fit for a product vision that we had. And post-acquisition, that studio is en route to a multi-year 30, 40, hopefully not too much, 50 million style of a product that we're making a big bet on. By the way, we're hiring, so so that's why I say kind of.
And I think one of the points that I'm getting to in many of these questions is that no matter what a target company might look like, just because you have value doesn't mean you're a fit for any particular buyer. You know, the company that is 2 years away from product launch might be a fantastic company worth a lot of money, but there are buyers for whom you are such a bad fit that there isn't worth the conversation. So I think it's important to do a fit to the situation. What do you feel about the, you know, is it important to have had a prior business relationship with the company? There are companies that only, you know, that want to acquire businesses where they've previously been publishing for them or have a minority investment. You know, what is the kind of life cycle of a relationship that's going to end up in a potential acquisition?
I'll start.
John?
Or John, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, for us, that really doesn't matter that we've had a previous relationship. I think that starts with, you know, the initial call and then the meeting of the team. And if it's going to go somewhere, then generally the life cycle's 3 to 6 months, start to finish. So I think within that time, you really get to understand whether it's going to be a good fit or not. And so with TinyCo, we didn't really know them previously. We knew of them, but that was a great fit for us. You know, a few other ones we've done, the Yukon Studios, Bingo Pop, we didn't know them at all, but that's been fantastic as well. So.
And I'm assuming Stillfront does.
Yeah, so we're very, very picky. We've filtered about 1,500 companies. At any given time, we'll have about 200 companies in our pipeline for M&A. And we make 1 or 2 acquisitions a year. So we're extremely picky. We follow companies for a long time. Many of us, you know, some of us have been in the games industry for 30 years. Some of us have been, you know, for 10 years, 15 years. We've been along for a long time, so we know a lot of the players, and we know a lot of the teams. When you've got 12 entrepreneurs that have started their own companies, you know, that's pretty good for reference checks in terms of who you know you're going to buy, who you're not going to buy. So although we don't need to have an existing relationship in terms of publishing all that, that's not really needed. We tend to observe for a long time and check, and then once we've made a decision, then we're very fast. And you know, it's 3 months.
And for us, it's really about knowing the entrepreneurs. I mean, maybe we're a little more methodical that way. Very picky in that regard because it's, you know, for us, it's not just about, you know, their ability to drive success, but there also has to be a cultural fit as well between, you know, how we're viewing the world a little bit and how some of the other companies are. I mean, you don't want to find two that are just so polar opposite that there's no way they're going to learn or share. Take our time, get to know the entrepreneurs as much as we can. Of course, we filter through a lot. But once we sort of get to that point where we feel there's a good connection with them, there's a good cultural fit, then it can be quite fast after that.
Yeah.
So the life cycle is N months where N can be a very large number of getting to know you, followed by a 3 months or so of kind of intense deal.
I mean, there's also the opportunistic stuff. I mean, you get things from investment banks and you sort of look at it and go, wow, okay, they've been able to replicate success, they're really interesting, and then you kind of dive in. And yeah, it might be a competitive process at that point, but you then take some time. And we've missed opportunities because the important thing for us, again, is to get to know the team and the entrepreneurs. If we miss an opportunity because we can't get to know them fast enough, then fine, we miss it. But that part of knowing them is important.
So Jaakko, how important is a prior relationship with you or Ilka or one of the core team members?
Yeah, I think just I'm thinking about the investments we've done. So I think with many of them we haven't had any relationship, like any sort of formal relationship. But I think, as Alexis said, I think many of the teams we invested, they have been around for a long time, and also like our founders and employees, they know a lot of people in the industry. So usually there's someone who knows someone who worked with them, for example, in the past. It doesn't have to be a business relationship, but it helps if there's some connection between us from the past. But yeah, we also can move very, very fast once we sort of made the decision to commit to investment, because we are very small, sort of still a fairly small and agile team.
Very small.
Yes.
Just a couple of people on the team, right?
Yeah, exactly. Me and one other guy. So.
Yeah. And talk a little, you mentioned banks and the role that banks have. Banks do a lot of promising to their companies that engage them. How useful is it to have a bank do the introduction? Does that increase the odds, decrease the odds? How do you feel about the classic auction process where the banks want to find the highest bidder? Do you play in those?
I can tell you I don't like it. I don't like to play that game.
I mean,
no offense to any bankers advisors here, and I think the distinction is I think there's some great ones and there's some mediocre ones and there's some horrible ones out there. I don't want to speak on behalf of the group, but I'd like to believe all of us here should have the reach and coverage to be able to identify and vet quality deals before the banks are retained by these firms.
Yeah.
That's kind of my view. So my personal view is I would get embarrassed if there was genuinely a great opportunity that came to me that I did not know about through a bank. I would be chagrined.
Yeah, I agree with Sean. I mean, it depends on the bank, and I'm not saying this as a plug for anybody, but I've had a long working relationship with Shum at Ignicio, and the great thing about Shum is that he actually knows the games industry. He does work with the entrepreneurs to find the right kind of cultural fit, and yes, they do want to drive a price, but a fair price at the back of that. Those are the people I like to work with. But I'm with Sean though, through our network, we have direct contact with so many entrepreneurs anyway. But every now and again, you get some real gems out of bankers like Shum.
No, the thing I would say that's important if you're thinking about entering a process with your company, the fact that you have a bank, and very often we'll start talking with someone that will recommend, if you're serious about this, get a bank. Mm-hmm. Because that means that if you have a bank, and a good one that has done deals, and you've retained someone, that means that you're serious about your process, and then that means that we take you more seriously. Yeah. On the other hand, in terms of the question about competitions and auctions, we almost never participate in those because normally we know the company before that, and the fit is so important because we co-own Stillfront that if the founders don't see that and they feel the need to go into an auction process, they're probably the wrong fit.
Yeah, I think for us, it's important to have a relationship, obviously, with the studios that we're talking to, and at some point, a banker is going to get involved. Hopefully not. Sorry, Sanford. But it's for us. It's good to have the relationship with the banker too. And there's a handful of good ones out there, and then there's some that aren't as important and aren't as relevant. So, but I still think having the relationship with the bankers are key.
Yeah, I certainly the processes that I see, a bank can add a lot of value once to bring the deal from the kind of amorphous, it's interesting, to let's get it done. Provide context for the negotiation, provide some realism for the entrepreneur who may have a different perspective on what value looks like. and can help on deal negotiations and such. But it's you do need to choose somebody. If they're asking you questions about how the mobile game industry works, it's probably not a relationship that's going to be fruitful. Let's talk a little bit about how you keep your teams engaged. When you're looking to bring an entrepreneur into the group, do they keep a minority stake? Do they have an earn-out? Do they, how do you make sure that they stick around and they have the incentive? And how important is that?
I'll start this time. So for us, it's obviously super key. I actually joined this Stillfront because Stillfront acquired my studio, so I'm a good example of that. And basically the way it works is usually first in the deal structure, so usually there's an earn-out structure and that sort of stuff, which is kind of that common. And also, but the most important thing, the really key thing, is the autonomy. It's like we acquire studios that are already working very well, that we're able to empower through the collaborations of having other like-minded people working with you. For me, at eRepublic, for example, when I was at Republic, one of the things I was missing is we had a really nice studio that was doing very well, very profitable, that we knew that we were never going to be the next Supercell. There was just that DNA that wasn't there, where we couldn't get the right people around the table. Now, as part of Stillfront, where we have access to all this knowledge, we've got a studio that's very good at UA, and our studio is very good at other things. We have that access. It's so much more exciting. And you see, if you look at every single studio that's joined Stillfront, if you look at the organic growth of that studio, it's had a positive effect. So that's kind of the way to retain people is through autonomy and success. If they continue to be successful with you, they're more successful with you going forward, they're going to stay with you. There's no, that's how it works.
For many of certainly the entrepreneurs we find worthwhile are the ones that ask the question, what value do you bring to us? And that's an important one because, there's the money component, and certainly many good entrepreneurs out there want to take a little money off the table, but they also want to use a lot of that cash to put back into the company because they're here and they do want the opportunity to become a Supercell. And so it's just as important for us to structure a deal the right way, certainly with the financial incentives there, but also to be able to show that there's value in joining the group and give them a pathway to really scale that business the way they want to.
John, do you want to comment on, or Jaakko, you actually take this to the logical extreme of leaving a minority interest in the hands of the entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to the model that Tencent has worked with us with. So we want to leave the employees and the founders with a meaningful equity stake in the company. So even if we have a majority, we feel that the team still needs to have a meaningful upside through the equity. And we believe that in every startup, every single employee should be a shareholder. And the other one is, as Alexis said, so it's the upside and then it's control and autonomy. So even though we have a majority, the team will still have complete control over their own destiny and complete creative control on other aspects as well.
I actually have a question for Mark, you and the panelists. Is the question I have is, as a former banker, this might be very blasphemous, but I still struggle with the concept of contractual terms or financial, whether it's minority or other upside or earn-out, whatnot. I struggle. Do they really work? Because I've seen examples abound where they're completely bought out, yet they're just motivated up the wazoo to continue to build the business that they built and create success. And other setups where they have all these incentives that are not, they're already checked out. So I'm just kind of wondering, where does reality sit?
So you get a lot of, I've probably done several hundred deals that have various flavors of that, so I can be a panelist on this one. One of the answers is that a highly engineered earnout, that is, this product has to do this amount in this year, definitely you need to really understand how the behaviors are affected by that. because the team was going to drive to the earnout. I mean, it's like any bonus plan you're going to have, particularly since these are very, very rich bonus plans. You need to really understand and know exactly what you want. The more you want them to do, hey, build a great company, build some great products, and don't necessarily hit this year's EBITDA target, but build something that's going to be lasting. That's harder to do with a earnout formula, and easier to do a little bit with the ongoing equity, either in the entity that they continue to own or in the parent entity. So if you can align them around your stock, then they kind of don't care, they're building something that's great, that Stillfront gets value from, as opposed to from their subsidiary. So it's a hard conversation, but a really, really important one, because it's one of the things that reveals what you're going to do together, because you date for this 3-month period, during the deal process, but you live together for another, N years, and that has to work right. That's much more important.
I think just to bounce on that, that's why we have a super flexible formula where there's no like one size fits all deal. One of the key elements that we do, of course, is when it makes sense, we always try and have an important share component in terms of the shares in the company, which, as you know, are publicly traded. Usually people are quite happy because those shares are doing very well. We've just become the new games unicorn, so obviously that's good. But what we see is in that conversation, we have a very, very serious conversation, and I will personally push the people in the team to the last limit, and then we even structure the deals in a way so that it is more interesting for them to step down than potentially staying sometimes, and we've done that in the past. And then you're sure that people are staying around, they're staying around for the right reasons. So we've done that sort of stuff.
John?
Yeah, I think it's just for us, it's a case-by-case basis. What do the founders want? If you can tell they want out, but you really love what they have, give them a bigger upfront and get them the heck out of there. Or if they're really passionate about it and you can see it's a 2 to 3 year horizon, give them maybe a smaller upfront, but much bigger upside potential, and just structured so they have different layers where they can, make a bigger piece if they really hit it out of the park.
And different buyers have different approaches. For 25 years, EA refused to do any earnouts. As a corporate policy, that it was, money up front. They did not want to. They wanted to have people become part of the team, fully integrated, and they didn't want to have any misaligned interests. They always wanted to align people's interests around the equity and the compensation packages around EA. Other companies had completely the opposite approach. So this is, you can learn a lot about your buyer by how they want to incent you and how they want to change your influence your behavior. So one last question. I think we're at the end of our time. Are there any geographies you wouldn't do a deal in? Can you think of, is it all about the game and it doesn't matter that the company is located in China, in the middle of Africa? Is it, how do you feel about the geographic choice?
For me, and for us, it really comes down to, for example, and I'm not trying to put any one country down. I mean, sometimes IP rights are tricky in one country or another. Like in the case of MTG, MTG owned a media company in Russia, and then the government changed policy there to where foreign companies couldn't own majority shares, so they lost their shirt on that. And of course, all the IP was owned by that Russian entity, so MTG lost everything. And I think it's okay, from our perspective, looking at companies where, you have a company like Game Insight, where they have a huge development studio in Russia, but all the IP is held in Lithuania and in London. That's okay, because at least we know there's stability and sort of IP rights in those territories. Yep. So we kind of look, but it's also where the IP sits in the end for us.
We're completely geography agnostic. I'm in big trouble with Greta Thunberg on my carbon footprint. it's not really good. So actually, we're going to do something about that. We're speaking with Supercell about what they're doing to do something for their carbon footprint.
Only invest in territories where you can go by boat.
But no, what's beautiful about this industry is that honestly, yes, there's those ups, in the scene, that, but quite honestly, right now, you can build a world-class team, world-class game pretty much anywhere.
The tools are there, and it doesn't need to actually be anywhere. It can be distributed in any place. So thank you for the wisdom, and I'm sure the panelists would be happy to chat afterwards, both here and outside. So, and thank you for attending.